Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Genoa City had seen its share of chaos, betrayal, and corporate bloodbaths, but the storm brewing on this particular Friday felt different. It felt personal. It felt dangerous. And at the center of it all stood Diane Jenkins, refusing to believe that lightning could strike the Abbott family twice. At the Abbott mansion, the silence was suffocating. Diane paced the living room, her heels striking the hardwood floor in sharp, anxious beats. The grandfather clock ticked louder than usual, mocking her with every passing second. Jack hadn't come home, he hadn't answered calls, he hadn't responded to texts. And the longer she waited, the more a terrible memory crept into her mind. Years ago, Victor Newman had orchestrated a nightmare, Jack abducted, manipulated, psychologically shattered, and replaced by a drug kingpin who wore his face like a mask. Diane remembered the hollow look in Jack's eyes when the truth came out. She remembered how fragile he had been beneath that trademark Abbott confidence. She refused to relive that nightmare. But fear didn't care what she refused. She dialed his number again, straight to voicemail. "Come on, Jack," she whispered, gripping the phone tighter. Across town at Jabot, confusion was spreading. Executives were whispering, meetings had been canceled, and Kyle Abbott stood in his father's office staring at an empty chair. Kyle had spoken to Jack the night before. His father had seemed distracted, agitated. There had been tension in his voice, something about a board maneuver, something about Victor circling like a shark again. Kyle had dismissed it at the time. Now it felt like a warning. His phone buzzed. "Diane. Have you heard from him?" she demanded without greetings. Kyle's stomach dropped. "No, I thought he was with you." A long silence followed. "He never came home," Diane said quietly. The words landed like a blow. Kyle tried to keep his composure. "Okay, let's not panic. Maybe he stayed at the office, maybe." "Don't," Diane snapped, her voice cracking. "Don't give me maybes." Because she knew what maybes meant in Genoa City. Back at the Abbott mansion, Diane refused to sit still. She grabbed her coat and car keys. If Jack wasn't answering calls, she would find him herself. Meanwhile, miles away in a dimly lit warehouse near the outskirts of town, Jack Abbott was slowly regaining consciousness. His head throbbed. He tried to move, but his wrists were restrained to a metal chair. The air smelled of oil and rust. A single hanging light swung gently overhead. Memories came in fragments, leaving the office late, a figure approaching him in the parking garage, something sharp against his neck, then darkness. He blinked hard, forcing his mind to focus. "This again," he muttered bitterly. He thought of Victor instantly. Because who else would dare? Footsteps echoed across concrete. A shadow stepped into the light. Not Victor, but someone clearly working for him. Jack's jaw tightened. Tell Victor if he wants to finish something, he can do it himself. The man didn't respond. He simply checked the ropes and walked back into the darkness. Jack's pulse quickened. This wasn't about intimidation. This was calculated. Back in Genoa City, Diane drove straight to Newman Enterprises. She didn't call ahead. She stormed through the doors like a woman possessed. Employees parted instantly as she marched toward the executive elevator. Security hesitated, then backed down. No one wanted to be the one who blocked Diane Jenkins when she was in this mood. Moments later, she stood in Victor's office. He didn't look surprised to see her. He looked amused. "What do I owe the pleasure?" Victor asked coolly. "Where is he?" Diane demanded. Victor leaned back in his chair, folding his hands. "You'll have to be more specific." "Jack," she spat, "where is my husband?" Victor's expression remained infuriatingly calm. "If I had your husband, Diane, you would know it." Her eyes narrowed. "You've done this before." "And I paid dearly for it," Victor replied smoothly. "I've learned from my mistakes." Diane didn't believe him. But she also knew Victor rarely repeated the same tactic twice. Still, she leaned closer. "If you are lying to me." Victor's voice turned cold, careful. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Diane straightened. "If you didn't take him, someone did, and if you know anything, you will tell me." Victor's eyes flickered just for a second. "Oh, Craig, I knew something." But he wasn't going to hand it to her. Meanwhile, across town at the Grand Phoenix, Phyllis Summers sat alone in her suite, staring at her reflection in the mirror. For the first time in a long time, she didn't recognize the woman staring back. Her world had been unraveling slowly, her schemes, her alliances, her desperate need to win at any cost. But none of that compared to the look on Daniel Romalotti Jr.'s face the last time they argued. Disappointment. Not anger. Not rage. Disappointment. That hurt worse. She had pushed him away, manipulated situations, justified it all as protection. Protection from Victor, protection from enemies, protection from a world that had chewed her up more than once. But in doing so, she had lost the one person who mattered most. Her son. The weight of it hit her fully now. And it was crushing. She grabbed her phone and scrolled through old photos. Daniel as a baby, Daniel at graduation, Daniel laughing with Lucy. When had she become someone he didn't trust? Her throat tightened. As she stood abruptly. No more pride, no more ego. As she was going to fix this. Or at least try. Back at the warehouse, Jack strained against his restraints. He forced himself to breathe evenly. Panic wouldn't help. He had survived worse. But as minutes turned into hours, doubt crept in. Was this Victor or someone else seizing opportunity in the chaos of their rivalry? Suddenly, the warehouse door creaked open again. This time, a familiar voice echoed. You really don't learn, do you? Jack looked up sharply. Victor stepped into the light. And for the first time, uncertainty flickered across Jack Abbott's face. You, Jack breathed. Victor approached slowly. I didn't order this, Victor said evenly. Sure, Jack scoffed. Victor crouched slightly, lowering his voice. If I wanted you removed, you would not be sitting here talking to me. Jack studied him carefully and realized something unsettling. Victor looked irritated, not triumphant, which meant someone else was pulling strings. Victor stood and turned toward the shadows. Bring him. Another figure emerged, a rival investor recently humiliated by both Newman and Abbott interests. This, Victor said calmly, is what happens when amateurs try to escalate. The investor looked pale. This wasn't part of the plan, he stammered. Victor's glare silenced him. Jack's mind raced. This wasn't Victor's scheme. It was collateral damage in a much larger war. Victor nodded toward the ropes. Untie him. Moments later, Jack stood on shaky legs. Victor met his gaze. Consider this a warning, Jack. The battlefield is changing. Jack didn't thank him. He didn't trust him. But he understood one thing clearly. The war between Newman and Abbott had inspired monsters. And those monsters weren't playing by old rules anymore. Diane's phone rang just as she left Newman Enterprises. Unknown number. Her heart leapt. Hello. Mrs. Abbott, a voice said cautiously, your husband has been located. Her knees nearly gave out. Minutes later, she arrived at a private clinic on the edge of town. Jack stood there, bruised but alive. She ran to him, wrapping her arms around him as if letting go would make him vanish. Don't ever do that to me again, she whispered fiercely. I didn't plan on it, he replied softly. When they pulled apart, Diane searched his face. Victor. Jack shook his head. No, he said slowly, but this started because of him, because of us. The realization settled heavily between them. Their battles had consequences. Real ones. Later at the Abbott mansion, Jack gathered Kyle and Diane's. This isn't just about rivalry anymore, Jack said firmly. We've created a climate where anyone thinks they can profit off our war. Kyle's jaw clenched, so what do we do? Jack looked out the window, thoughtful. We change the rules. Meanwhile, at Crimson Lights, Phyllis spotted Daniel sitting alone. She hesitated for a rare moment. Then she walked toward him. He looked up, guarded. Mom. 2 letters so distant. I know I don't deserve your time, she began, her voice uncharacteristically steady, but I need to say this. Daniel didn't interrupt. She swallowed hard. I have spent my entire life fighting to survive, fighting to win, and somewhere along the way I forgot to just be your mother. Daniel's expression softened slightly. I hurt you, she continued, and I can't undo that, but I don't want to keep losing you because of my pride. Silence hung between them. Finally, Daniel exhaled. I don't need you to be perfect, he said quietly. I just need you to be honest. Her eyes glistened. I can try, she whispered. For the first time in weeks, the wall between them cracked. Not fixed, but cracked. Across town, Victor stood alone in his office, staring out at the city skyline. The boardroom wars were escalating. Jack was still standing. Diane was more dangerous than ever. Philly's was unpredictable, and the next move would determine everything. Victor allowed himself a small, calculating smile. The game wasn't over. It had just evolved. Back at the Abbott mansion, Diane watched Jack from across the room. He was strong, defiant, but she saw the exhaustion beneath it. She walked to him and took his hand. We fight smarter now, she said softly. Jack nodded. Because Genoa City had proven one thing yet again. In this town, love and power were always intertwined. And survival required both.